Beep, 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 beep. Live from Wellston, Georgia, it's another episode of the Wartown Times. Be sure to stay up to date by joining the Wartown Times Facebook group on the Facebook.
9. Conclusions and Solutions. In the beginning of this friendly neighborhood manifesto, we mentioned Wartown being known as the International City, due to the variety of cultures that come to our community, having been stationed at the Warner Robins Air Force Base. Servicemen and servicewomen from all over the country find their way here during their time in the armed forces and, for the duration of their orders, try to make it their home. When they are nearing the end of their stay, some going elsewhere around the world, yet others having the option to set roots and make Wartown their permanent dwelling, what impressions of our community do they hold? What experiences of our town will they take with them throughout the world, relaying to others they come across what it was like to call Wartown their home? Will they barely mention this place and its people, glad to have these zip codes in the rearview mirror, as nothing exceptional stood out to them from one carbon-copied city in a long line of cities they've set up shop in? Will their stay and future communication about us and our culture here barely be a blip on the radar of conversation because, just like every other city in America, we the people of Wartown just go along to get along, resting on apathy, actionless complaints, cries of victimhood mentality, with no real spirit or power to stand up and out as a location worthy of remembrance, longing, and praise? Worse yet, will they describe Wartown to other communities around the world as the crowning achievement of George Orwell's worst nightmare? A police state that's completely dependent upon preying on its own people through systemic violations of the Constitution and Bill of Rights these servicemen and servicewomen signed up to safeguard? Will they warn others to steer clear from Wartown because its most profitable industry is slavery, debtors' prisons, and attorney fraternities who participate, facilitate, and financially elevate from enforcing statutes, acts, codes, and ordinances while ignoring the supreme law of the land? Will they carry with them horror stories of random traffic stops which threw them into court cattle calls to have their money extorted from them under threat and duress? Will they call us the black hole due to privately owned for-profit probation companies ensnaring them at the behest of long-sitting politicians, officers, and elected officials who have maintained a monopoly over the city of Wartown for the past several decades? Or is it possible that the greatest asset Wartown could possibly have is the reputation it builds as a true home to American ideas of freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which could travel throughout the world by word of mouth as our appreciated armed forces come and go? What if, in just our community, a massive, peaceful, and lawful return to a republic is decided upon, acted upon, reinstituted, and cherished so much that it becomes the very place those same servicewomen and servicemen will mark as the city they will one day retire back to, because it stands for what they defend? What if you, dear reader, took part in actively bringing up the information gone over in this document to city council members, peace officers, friends, or family in the Bar Association, and started a community conversation about what we could be? What if these conversations and simple actions within and around local government could begin walking back an economy built on subversion of rights towards an unstoppable economy fueled by the passion and ingenuity of its people? How far could the reach of influence of one community willing to do things differently go and call to others who might find it a haven from a country falling apart and falling into dystopia? What if Wartown appreciated the armed forces as it says it does and pays much more than lip service to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights they risk their lives to protect? Knowledge can be infectious. Knowledge which empowers is addictive. It is our belief that with the power of the simple knowledge contained within this document, a swift and effective return to a republic in Wartown is very possible. A republic is the form of government all cities are contracted to obey and operate within, as all state and city charters are dependent upon the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It is not an egregious thing for we the people of Wartown to remind our city officials of this fact and demand they return to the confines of the contract, as they are in positions to use discretion in favor of said contract, which in turn means using discretion in favor of us. While many officials would imagine that operating in government is complicated and technical, often referring to members of the Bar Association to interpret for them the clear language of the founding documents. Now, we all know this is not necessary and falls under negligence. Our city officials and peace officers are negligent in their oath of office and ability to execute it if they're incapable of reading, understanding, and operating within the confines of the Constitution, rather allowing attorneys to rule by having them dictate what the document says or means. The source and power of the law is not derived from the interpretations of members of the Bar Association. The source and power of law is not derived from judges operating within our community that rose from the same Bar Association. The source and power of law is not in police chiefs or sheriffs. The source and power of law is in we the people of Wartown. Yickwo v. Hopkins, 118 U.S. 356 says, quote, "Sovereignty itself is, of course, not subject to law, for it is the author and source of law. But, in our system, while sovereign powers are delegated to the agencies of government, sovereignty itself remains with the people by whom and for whom all government exists and acts, and the law is the definition and limitation of power. It is indeed quite true that there must always be lodged somewhere, and in some person or body, the authority of final decision, and in many cases of mere administration. The responsibility is purely political, no appeal lying except to the ultimate tribunal of the public judgment, exercised either in the pressure of opinion or by means of the suffrage. But the fundamental rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness considered as individual possessions are secured by those maxims of constitutional law, which are the monuments showing the victorious progress of the race in securing to men the blessings of civilization under the reign of just and equal laws, so that, in the famous language of the Massachusetts Bill of Rights, the government of the Commonwealth may be a government of laws and not of men. For the very idea that one man may be compelled to hold his life, or the means of living, or any material right essential to the enjoyment of life at the mere will of another, seems to be intolerable in any country where freedom prevails as being the essence of slavery itself." End quote. The final authority on the law is you, dear reader. Again, the above words are a Supreme Court justice affirming this, and unless there has been an insurrection here in Wartown, it is still the case in our community. Our task is simple: to know these things ourselves, to educate others about them, to inform city officials to them, to expect city officials to use discretion in favor of them, to hold city officials accountable to them at every opportunity. In the age of the internet, where communication and monitoring is at the cutting edge and typically used against we, the people of Wartown, isn't it time this tool be utilized by us and for us? We think it is. And we invite you to join us in beginning this type of common sense thinking again in Wartown by engaging with us in the following initiatives. Bulk pocket constitutions. The foundation of restoring our community to a republic where our individual liberty is the priority is, of course, owning the founding documents, knowing what they say, and how to apply them in our daily lives. Additionally, having bulk pocket constitutions in our automobiles with us affords the opportunity to hand them out to fellow Wartown residents with contact information or QR codes to mobilize as a community in reinforcing this knowledge. It also will be appropriate to hand them to peace officers with other documentation they might request, informing them of their duty as well as our awareness to our rights and their obligation to protect them. Pocket constitutions also need to be supplied to any public official working in or from City Hall, as well as courthouses and any taxpayer facility. Fully informed juries. Supplying as many individuals as possible in our community with material which educates them to the fact that the jury is one of the best defenses to our individual liberty is essential. Many who find themselves serving on a jury where the state is assaulting an individual with victimless charges are completely unaware that regardless of if the person violated a statute, act, code, or ordinance or not, an informed jury can find the defendant not guilty with impunity. The jury can decide in deliberation that legislation is unjust with their verdict, despite the legislation being on the books. What better way to take the monetary motivation away from a runaway judicial system than to make it cost more to prosecute frivolous charges that will be dismissed by we the people than what the broken system could receive? City Hall and Council outreach. Having regular communication with our individual city council members to share the information in this Friendly Neighborhood Manifesto is critical, as many of our employees at City Hall are also unaware of these simple, fundamental pieces of information. Historically, we can go back to many votes on many agenda items which did not or do not fall in line with the principles of a republic, as in one way or another they violate these principles, which indicates a violation of all our rights. It is our responsibility to inform them when they are in error on their votes with relentless fervor. Wartown Robins. Being a safe haven for whistleblowers within city government or an avenue for those aware of active corruption in our city is an absolute must. The Wartown Times Group must make it widely known that people with news tips and information of any naughtiness in the systems of government we pay for are safe to pass this information along to us, as we can report and make such information widely known without the entangling alliances most local news media outlets are burdened with. We must create and maintain confidentiality to all would-be Wartown Robins or whistleblowers who want to point us in the right direction but have their anonymity protected with journalistic integrity. Having eyes and ears everywhere, from high offices to janitors, every resident of Wartown is a priceless resource in assisting us in keeping our public servants accountable. Loose lips sink ships, and that isn't always a bad thing. Wartown Warrior Press Passes. The Wartown Times Group operates under the First Amendment of the Constitution, and therefore will be providing press passes and badges to any of our active members who request one. Having little pieces of paper that remind government you have a fundamental right to do a thing is very empowering. Rather than constantly getting misinformed by bias and bought-out local media, isn't it time that we, the people of Wartown, reassert our power in the First Amendment and become the press ourselves? Getting a call or email from one or two disgruntled residents is easy enough to sweep under the rug. Refusing to be transparent with a widespread army of invested journalists is a completely different game altogether, isn't it? Citizens' comments. One of the greatest resources we, the people of Wartown, have at our disposal is the ability to attend and speak at City Council meetings during Citizens' Comments. Citizens' Comments are open to all residents to speak about the issues we want brought into the public discourse and have our expressions unedited, live-streamed, and in front of local news media outlets. This avenue affords us the opportunity to focus in on specific issues collectively with our numerous voices and repetitiously bring light to corruption, failings, or frustrations with local government officials until we receive a redress of grievance for them. We must always remember that corruption grows in the shadows, and it is our duty and obligation to use our individual and united voices to shed light on issues local media downplays or attempts to sweep away with sound bites. With mobilization and communication, one city council meeting where scores of residents expressed their disgust that our tax dollars are being spent to cage flesh and blood human beings to later be subjected to essentially indentured servitude to privately owned, for-profit companies would certainly cause momentum for such injustice to be changed. Wartown Times Zoom meetings. Outside of citizens' comments, the Wartown Times will be having regular Zoom meetings for those within the group. These Zoom meetings will be utilized for strategizing and creating actionable measures to assist our local government officials back into the contract they have sworn an oath to protect. These regular Zoom meetings will be recorded and, with discretion, used for public dissemination via the Wartown Times in its various platforms. Peace Officer Outreach. It is vital that we educate our local police offices with the information contained in this Friendly Neighborhood Manifesto so that they can be the front line in safeguarding our liberties. Each peace officer we employ within Wartown must understand that we are not consenting to the enforcement of statutes, codes, acts, or ordinances where no party has had their rights violated or property infringed upon. What we are paying for is that they do their due diligence to protect our liberties. Peace officers must be educated to use their discretion and common sense when interacting with we, the people of Wartown. It is our duty to make men and women who serve with a badge repeat the mantra, no victim, no crime. Additional initiatives to be announced. The first steps in bringing the vision of this Friendly Neighborhood Manifesto to Wartown are the awareness of the issues and realities of legality versus lawfulness. The primary objective of the Wartown Times is to bring together a dedicated, educated, and active group of Wartown warriors who will comprehend this information combined with the ability to articulate it throughout the community effectively. The most important aspect of our mission is re-injecting these philosophies and perspectives of the rule of law given to us by our founders and safeguarded by our armed services and people such as we. Therefore, the above initiatives are sufficient to begin the process, with further initiatives to be developed by the group itself, moving forward, targeting specific problems one at a time until they're cleaned up. Additionally, as this friendly neighborhood manifesto circulates throughout the community, like-minded contributors are welcome to suggest amendments and addendums that will be added in updated editions. In the beginning of this friendly neighborhood manifesto, we cited the wisdom of the Holy Bible from 2 Kings, which beautifully illustrates how far a society can fall into ruin by believing they know the law and its applications, when in fact, true knowledge of the law had been long forgotten. Entire institutions had been built and ran under assumptions of law that had been delegated to so-called experts and denied by the people, from which is the source and power of law. Given what we have come to understand throughout the course of this friendly neighborhood manifesto, is it not safe to say that we, the people of Wartown, are also at a moment of decision? Will we, like so many communities across America, choose to continue allowing corruption to consume all our fundamental rights like a plague or virus? Or are we wise enough to repent or rethink what we have allowed to transpire through apathy and begin to reverse these problems for ourselves and our progeny? These are individual questions that must be answered by you, dear reader, when we close out this friendly neighborhood manifesto with profound words from a literary keystone of America. In the beginning of a change, the patriot is a scarce man, and brave, and hated, and scorned. When his cause succeeds, the timid join him, for then it costs nothing to be a patriot. Mark Twain.
Beep, 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 beep. Live from Wellston, Georgia, it's another episode of the Wartown Times. Be sure to stay up to date by joining the Wartown Times Facebook group on the Facebook.